So recently I was catching up with a friend who I hadn't caught up with in a while, and she let me know that she had actually been really struggling over the past year. She said that she was feeling really isolated, lonely, lost, going through a breakup, and just overall losing hope. And when I asked her, like, hey, have you thought of going to therapy? Have you thought of talking to someone about this? She mentioned that she had, but was hesitating for this and that reason. So I let her know that, like, hey, I actually just finished school to be a therapist, and I have also been to therapy myself. So if you have any questions about therapy, please ask and I'd be happy to answer them. And she actually asked me a few questions. She asked things like, how often should you go to therapy? How do you go about finding a therapist? What do you tell your therapist? What if you don't like your therapist? And as she was asking me these questions, I kind of realized that there are probably a lot of other people out there with those exact same questions. And especially in the past year of being in a panini, there have been a lot more conversations about mental health as rates of depression and anxiety and loneliness have just been through the roof. And naturally, more people are probably thinking of going to therapy, but might be hesitating because they don't know what to expect, like my friend. So in the spirit of Mental Health Awareness Month, I have put together a list of 5 things I wish I knew before starting therapy that I think would have just made starting so much easier. And I hope that by sharing these lessons with you that they can help ease any uncertainty that you might be having and give you a better idea of what to expect in therapy, and maybe even motivate you to make that first appointment. So let's get started. Making that first appointment can sometimes be the hardest part of the entire therapy. I had so much resistance about going to therapy for the first time. I did not want to admit that I needed help. I did not want to admit that I was struggling. I thought that therapy was only for people with a mental illness, and I had so much internalized stigma about mental health. I thought that going to therapy meant that I was weak, and honestly, I was scared of going to therapy. And it honestly felt like like a Herculean effort to make that decision that I am going to therapy, and then to find a therapist, call them, make that first appointment. I know for some people it might not seem like that big of a deal to make that first appointment, but for someone who is struggling with low energy and lack of motivation, making that first appointment can really be so hard. Not even considering any internalized mental health stigma on top of that. And I wish I had known that it is completely normal for it to feel really difficult to make that first appointment, and to just allow myself to feel proud of myself for a second and to celebrate myself for making that first appointment, because it really is something to be celebrated. Making that first appointment is literally the most important step in your healing journey and your path to feeling better. And really, it does take so much courage to decide to face your problems head on. It takes a hell of a lot of strength. And here I was thinking that going to therapy meant that I was weak, which is completely the opposite of what that means. Making that first appointment might look like something small on the outside, but it really is a big deal and a huge sign of strength. And once you do make that first appointment, you really should celebrate, because that totally deserves to be celebrated. Your first therapist might not be the one. I remember someone once said to me that they had tried therapy once, but they just don't think it's for them. And now that I understand how therapy works, I realize that that's kind of the equivalent of saying, yeah, I went on a date once, I just don't think dating is for me. Just like in dating, the first therapist that you see might not be the one. No 2 therapists are the same, just like no 2 people are the same. And just like dating, it takes some trial and error and meeting multiple people until you find someone that you just click with and you feel like they just get you. And I can say this from experience. I have seen a few therapists over the past few years, and some of them I could just tell right off the bat, like, this isn't gonna work. But my current therapist, who I've been seeing for several months now, I think she's the one. And I think a big part of the reason why is because we do share the same background of being Asian Canadian. And that is actually something that I recommend to anybody finding a therapist for the first time, is that you find somebody that you share certain parts of your identity with. whether that's your cultural identity, your gender identity, if you belong to the LGBTQ plus community, because the more you and your therapist can relate to each other, the less you will have to explain to them because they will just already get it, and the more comfortable you will feel sharing certain things about yourself. Which brings me to my next point. Be as honest as you've ever been. When I first started therapy, I was pretty reluctant to open up. First of all, I was not used to talking about feelings. It just felt so foreign to me. And also it just felt really weird and exposing to tell this stranger about personal things about me. Like, I know that it's their job to listen and to help me, but like, I don't know, it just felt weird. And I learned over time as I had more and more sessions that when I didn't open up, I never got the help that I needed. And now that I have finished school to be a therapist, I also understand that I won't be able to provide somebody with the help that they need if they only give me half of their story. And something else that we learned in school that really stuck with me is that therapy only works if you tell the truth. And I know it can feel scary to tell the truth, and it can be really hard to be honest to ourselves, let alone another person. I've been there and I totally understand how scary and vulnerable that can feel. But something I wish that everyone thinking of going to therapy knew is that one of the first things we are trained on as therapists is how to be non-judgmental, how to provide a safe, non-judgmental space where somebody can be their full, authentic selves, flaws, messiness, and everything, and be able to accept and support them in all of that. And I know you can know in theory that your therapist isn't gonna judge you, but it can still take some time to feel comfortable enough to open up and tell them about certain things. And as you do, as you peel back the layers of the onion and tell them certain things about yourself that you might have felt reluctant to tell at first, you'll find that they'll still be able to hold that safe and accepting and supportive space for you, which in itself is healing. You get out of therapy what you put in. So there's this really bad joke that I heard in school that goes, how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light bulb has to want to change. Therapy only works if you want to make a change and are willing to make a change. When I first started therapy, I thought that I would just walk in and be like, I'm here, fix me, and therapist would like do some magic or something and I wouldn't have to do anything and then I would be healed. So I soon found out that that is not how therapy works, and that therapy is actually a lot of work on your end, and a lot of that work happens in between sessions. So some therapists might give little take-home homework assignments to do to help you to keep track of your thoughts and feelings, and then to take that into your next session so you can go over it together. And that takes a lot of self-awareness and self-reflection, which is a lot of work. And in school we learned that the work done in between sessions is actually more important than the therapy session itself. And that does make sense. It's kind of like if you wanted to get fit and you got a personal trainer to help you with that. You're not gonna get fit by just working out with this personal trainer once a week. You're gonna get fit by sticking with your workouts and your healthy habits throughout the week. And the same thing goes with therapy. So just be prepared if you are thinking of going to therapy. It's not always gonna feel like a walk in the park. It is work, but it is so worth it for how much you learn about yourself and for how much your life will improve. Progress is not linear. When I first started therapy, I thought my progress was gonna look like this, but it ended up looking more like this. And I thought that because my progress wasn't perfectly linear, that I was doing something wrong, or that there was something wrong with me, or that therapy wasn't working, and I would just get so frustrated and so impatient. And I wish I had known that this up and down progress is completely normal and actually just how it's supposed to be. Mental health is definitely not linear, and if you do get put back a couple steps, It doesn't mean that all that work you've done up to this point has gone to waste or that you did something wrong. This is a completely natural part of the process and is to be expected. And all that work that you have done will pay off massively down the line, I promise. All right, everybody, so those were the 5 things I wish I knew before starting therapy. I hope that you find this helpful and that it makes therapy a little less daunting or weird. And if you do have any more questions about therapy, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'd love to do a follow-up video answering those questions. And I'll just end off by saying that you really don't have to have a specific reason or have to be going through something horrendous to go to therapy. Therapy is for everyone and everyone can benefit from therapy. And honestly, I can look back now and say that making that decision to make that first therapy appointment is one of the best decisions I have made in my entire life, and I want more people to have that experience. So even if you are vaguely considering going to therapy, I would highly recommend that you follow that urge. And if you do have your first therapy appointment coming up soon, I am so excited and happy for you. Just yay! All right, as always, let's chat in the comments, and I hope you're all staying healthy and staying safe. Bye.